Let's briefly look at the brachial plexus. Notice that the word brachial plexus is a combination of two words, which is brachia and then plexus. The word brachia comes from a Latin word brachium, which means arm. It simply refers to anything related to arm. What about the plexus? This also came from a Latin word which means braid or network. It simply describes the network of nerves or vessels in the body. In this case, we can say the brachial plexus is a network of nerves that originate from the spinal cord in the neck that extend through the armpit into the arm. This complex structure is responsible for motor and sensory intervention of upper limb, including the shoulder, arm, forearm, and the head. In simple English, what I'm trying to explain here is this. When we say the brachial plexus, it's simply a group of nerves that start in your neck and it goes down into your shoulder and arm. And this nerve helps you to move your arm, shoulder, anything related to arm, and it also helps you to feel things when you are being touched at that particular area. Here we have some very important key points related to brachial plexus. The first one we have by my right hand side we call the location. We need to know the location, exact location of the brachial plexus. And we need to know the importance of the brachial plexus, the function of the brachial plexus, the structure of the brachial plexus, and injury related to brachial plexus, or what happened when the brachial plexus is being injured, what is likely to happen. Starting with the first one, which says location. So when we said location, what does that mean? We are trying to know the exact location of the brachial plexus. It begins in the neck and travels through the shoulder to the arm. The next one which we have is the function. The brachial plexus have a lot of functions. But first thing I need you to understand is that without the brachial plexus, we will not be able to move our arm or even our hand. We can't even move it properly, and we can't feel any sensation. When someone touches at that arm, we can't feel anything because those group of nerves or network of nerves, which are the brachial plexus, they are the one responsible for sensory detection. So the next one which we have is the function. What is the function of the brachial plexus? What it does, it controls the muscles that help you to move your arms and hand, and it allows you to feel the sensation in the area, which I have said that initially. So the next one which we have on the list is the structure. What is the structure of the brachial plexus? So in this case, we can say the nerves that the brachial plexus is simply the nerve that comes from the spinal cord, that is from the neck, and they join together and they split into different branches that goes different part of the arm. Remember, anything that has to do with brachial plexus, we are focusing on the arms. And we have the structure. Yeah, I just finished explaining the structure. The last which you have is the injuries. What are the injuries that are likely to happen with the brachial plexus, and when those injuries happen, what will happen? In this case, you need to understand that when we damage those nerves, they can cause weakness, numbness, or even paralysis in the arm. You see, anatomically, the brachial plexus is divided into 5 distinct sections, which is the root, the trunk, division, cut, and the branches. We can choose to put it differently by using the mnemonics. Remember, let's say remember, to drink cold beer. In this case, notice that the remember simply stands for root. We're going to have root. And the to is simply going to stand for trunk. And the drink is going to be division. What about the cold? It's going to be the cut. And the branches, the beer is simply going to be the branches. So you can choose to use this mnemonic in order to make the arrangement perfect, because for it to be easier for you, you cannot switch the root instead of trunk, and you can't switch trunk instead of the root. We need first of all to see the roots, meaning that we're going to have C1 and C6 joined together. We're going to have C8 and T1 joined together. And the C7 is simply going to extend. So Next thing is the trunk. We're going to have tree trunk, which is upper, middle, and lower. Then we're going to have division, which is anterior and posterior division. And we're going to have the cut. And the last thing is the branches. In case you may briefly need the explanation of the root, when we say the root, these are 5 roots, each derived from the anterior rami of the spinal nerves. So what about the trunk? The trunk, this is simply the combination of the root. In this case, we're going to have different combination. So the roots combine to form 3 trunks. In this case, here we're going to have, these are the roots. Let's focus on the trunk this time around. So this we're going to call it the root, remaining the trunks. Notice that we're going to have 3 trunks, which is upper, middle, and lower. So the upper trunk is simply a combination of C5 and C6, which give us the upper trunk. Let's write it here. Let's say upper trunk. And the middle trunk is simply the continuation of C7. Here is simply going to be the middle trunk. And here we're going to have the lower trunk, which is a combination of C8 and T1. Combination of C8 and T1, which is going to be the lower trunk. If you notice here, we are done with the first one, which is the root. We are done with trunk. We are left with division. Before we talk about division, there is something which I need you to understand. There is what we call the extensor muscle. The extensor. Okay, let's write the muscles here. There is what we call the extensor muscles, and there is what we call the flexor muscles. These are very important. So, looking at the division of these trunks, first thing I need you to understand is that this division was split into 2. The trunk was simply split into 2. Each trunk here, we have 3 trunks. If they all split into 2, we're going to have 6. 3 multiplied by 2 is 6. They're going to split into anterior and then posterior. Notice that we talk about the flexor muscles and we talk about the extensor muscles, right? So among the anterior and posterior, we are going to be looking at which one will supply which. What I'm trying to explain here is this. The anterior division, this generally supplies the flexor muscles of the upper limb. And the posterior division, this one, it supplies the, the extensor. Let's look at how it works. Notice that we're going to have division, we're going to have anterior and then posterior, anterior and posterior. Here we can have the posterior, and then we can decide to have the anterior here. Let's give it a box. Here it's going to be the anterior division, and down here we're going to have the posterior division. And here we're going to have the anterior division, and here we are going to have the posterior division. Here we can have the posterior, the last one, and here we are going to have the anterior division. In this case, don't forget, as I mentioned earlier, we said the posterior, they supply to the extensor muscle, while the anterior, they supply to the flexor muscles. So in this case, notice that we are done with the root, trunk, we are done with the division. Next thing we're going to be focusing is on the cord. Alright, next thing we're going to be looking at is the cord. When you come to cord, the case is very simple at this point, because the division, which is into the anterior, posterior, anterior, posterior, posterior, anterior, is simply going to regroup itself into 3 cords, named according to the position or related to the axillary artery. In this case, here we're going to have anterior, let's say anterior, anterior, and let's look at the other anterior. And this is going to be the lateral. So sorry, the axillary artery, is 3. We have the lateral, posterior, and we have the medial. So in this case, we're going to have the anterior extend into one piece. We're going to have the posterior, and then the posterior. Alright, I'm sorry. There is a little bit of mistake which I need us to correct before we can proceed. Notice that the anterior from C1 and C5 will definitely connect with the anterior from the C7. And this is simply going to give rise to the lateral cord. In this case, notice that the posterior here, all the three posteriors is simply going to give rise to the posterior cord. We have 1, 2, and here is the third one. We can choose to write it this way. And here is going to give rise to posterior cord. In this case, the down one is going to extend, and this is going to be our medial cord. The next thing which we're going to have are the branches. You can use the mnemonic Mr. Alex run mad unknowingly. Let's say Mr. Alex run mad unknowingly. Notice that, let's start with the last one. The U simply stands for ulnar. And here is going to be the median nerves. And here we're going to have the radial nerve. And the A is axillary nerve. And here is going to be the musculocutaneous. Musculocutaneous nerve. Next thing we're going to be looking at is the cause that arises and forms the musculocutaneous, the axillary, the radial, and the median, then the last one, which is the ulnar. Notice that, starting with the first one, which we said the musculocutaneous, this arises from the lateral cord. This is lateral. Since it arises from here, the lateral cord is going to form the musculocutaneous. Simply. The next one is axillary. Notice that the axillary and the radial, they both arise from the posterior cord. And this is posterior cord. Since it's both of them, it's going to be something like this. And the next one we have, let's finish with the last one first, which is the ulna. This arises from the medial. Median nerves is the one which is kind of, sorry, I have been using cord instead of nerves. The musculocutaneous arise from the lateral cord. This is cord, while the axillary nerve and the radial nerve, they arises from the posterior cord. Then the median, this is formed by the contribution from the lateral and the median, meaning that we are going to have two combinations of the lateral and the median, which they will form the median nerves. So this is it for this problem. I hope you find it very helpful. If you do, please don't forget to share. Subscribe is most important than share to me. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Let's briefly